Hey, what's up guys? It is early November here and our property is looking pretty good. Lots of fall colors, so I wanted to give you guys a tour to see how everything's looking and what some of our plans are. One day we're going to be improving this fence line with a hedge. We're thinking some bay laurel. The English laurel up there has been eaten by the deer a lot. Thankfully we're improving our fencing too, so that should keep them out longer term. But the Chinese pistache right over here is looking great this time of year. We have another one over here as well with our manzanita. Coming over to the house, we've just been doing a little bit of work over here. We just added this sago palm here. It was planted up by our gate originally, but I think it'll do better here. This is the north side of the house, so it gets nice shade in summer. It'll still get a little bit of afternoon sun over here, but it'll get nice irrigation from the sprinklers, and we're hoping it straightens out a little. I think that's just from where it was planted beforehand. Its trunk seems straight, but it's a little angled towards the house, but I think the sun exposure will help fix that over time too. This planter's been kind of difficult. We have a lot of roots, as you can see here, that come from our liquid ambers. We used to have a third liquid amber in the lawn here as well, and they've all come over here and invaded things. They may have even gotten to a pipe, because it seems like we have a slight leak that we couldn't find the source of when we were planting that sago palm. But we'll figure out something to do with the rest of this planter. It's looking better down here where we don't have those roots. We have camellias back in here. They're about 30 years old, even though they don't look like it, because we've cut them to the ground multiple times, just because they've gotten a little unbearable. This one we're keeping more as a bush, so just letting it leaf out all over, whereas I guess this one's still a bush. But then these ones over here, we're just choosing a few select trunks, and hopefully we'll be able to make a multi-trunk shrub and lift it up off the ground a little bit. So it'll be kind of a floating cloud of camellias, which will be nice. And then all over here, this gets sun in the summertime. So we're doing flowers and grasses. It's all California native. So we have deer grass over here that's already growing well. Mendocino reed grass. Lots and lots of yarrow that we've already had here and that we're helping spread even further. Some California fescue, and I believe this is Idaho fescue. This was a little tiny sunflower, but a woolly sunflower siskiyou, but I think that died before we even got it in the ground, sadly. Up on this side of the house, this stays pretty much shaded year-round. So we're taking advantage of that. It has sprinklers as well, so it can stay nice and moist. And we put in giant chain ferns. It's the largest fern in North America. If I'm not mistaken, it'll get to 6 feet tall. The fronds get 6 feet long. So I think it'll be a really nice touch here if it grows successfully. It'll reach up above the bushes and probably get a little bit into this window. And this is where our formal dining room is, and we don't really want to entirely block that view. We used to have a Japanese maple here, which was nice, but it did kind of change the perspective, and we like being able to see out into the rest of the yard. So I think this will be a great size fern to have here. Coming around over here, we have another fern that I'm really excited about. It's a tree fern. It's a Tasmanian tree fern. It's still small. It's probably already a couple or a few years old, given how slowly they grow. This frond actually feels nice and fresh, which is good. It's a little bit moister this time of year since we've had a few rains. And I guess with this, it's most important to keep the crown and trunk nice and moist. This time of year, like I said, it's not as much of a concern since we have higher humidity naturally, but in the summer that will definitely be our priority, hosing it off and making sure it stays happy. And this will grow up to 15 or 20 feet tall eventually. And it'll keep forming a thicker and taller trunk. And the fronds, kind of like the giant chain fern, get, I think, 6 to 10 feet long, which will be really crazy. And I'm excited for it. I guess we can go out this way. follow the path around. This whole area above the driveway has kind of been a work in progress. We've put different things there multiple times and kind of just see what grows best. We have bottle brush, salvia, some grasses from Asia, bamboo bushes, creeping juniper. There's a manzanita up there, all sorts of different things. Rosemary, lavender. Up here is one of my favorites. It's a Euryops, which is from South Africa, and it looks like a daisy. And this is probably one of our easiest plants that we have here. We don't do anything to it. There's no deadheading going on. We aren't out here with scissors trimming anything, and it has gotten huge. It's probably easily up to 5, maybe 5.5 feet tall, and probably 8 feet wide at least at its widest. And it just never ceases to amaze us. It'll bloom multiple times throughout the year. It seems like in fall we always get one big last bloom before the season ends, and it looks great in addition to the rest of the fall colors around the yard, like the Chinese pistache out in the distance, some of our other flowers, even these blue ones over here. I believe this is, I'm not sure what this is. I think it might have been a catmint, but don't quote me on that. I think if the tag's in here, it's buried. It's probably some sort of sage, but the neon blue flowers up against the yellow is a really fun contrast. So I previously wasn't all that in love with this plant, but right now I'm kind of liking the combo. Over in this planter, these are all plants that have mostly been here since the house was built. We have a few more camellias, along with our Japanese maples that seem a little slow to drop their leaves this year. Or maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention last fall, but a lot of our other trees are already changing colors. We have a really tiny sad dogwood here that we planted a few years ago. That one's already losing its leaves. All of the Chinese pistaches have lost their leaves. I'm not sure what tree that is at the corner of the house. We should ID that, but that one's already changing color too. And our neighbors across the street, they just put in lots of Japanese maple also, and theirs are changing color too. So I'm not sure what's up. It does seem like the leaves have been confused these last few years with drought and then a good winter, and the temperatures are all over the place, so they'll probably lose their leaves and change color here soon. This boxwood hedge here has been a big work in progress for us. We hedged it back maybe a few weeks ago, and we had to cut into it a ways just to get it back to being the right shape, and we still haven't got it to the right shape vertically, and we might not ever be able to. They grow in kind of a shell, so once you're inside of the boxwood, there's no more leaves, and they just form a couple inch thick shell around the whole plant that has leaves. And once you cut into the woody layer, it no longer resprouts with leaves. So we're hoping some of this might fill in because we have a couple leaves here and there, but we did cut pretty far into it. Our goal was to get it back below the wall that's back here. That's typically how hedges and walls work, is you keep the hedge just below the wall, but ours got a little out of hand over the years, so we might just have to rip it out and put in new boxwood at one point. But so far it's looking all right, and we'll see how it does. We can come around this way to the backyard. We've been doing lots of work out there. So this area is right outside of the master bedroom and bathroom, so we've created somewhat of a wellness space out here. This whole decomposed granite area used to be grass, but I think the DG is a lot better for the area. It lightens it up a little bit, it's better year-round. We've had a sauna here for a while too. Hopefully it's not too dirty. You can take a peek inside. I think it's an 8 or 6 person sauna, and it's wood fired. So all the stones and the main portion of the stove are inside the sauna, but then you feed the fire from the outside, which is nice, so it doesn't get too smoky. We also have these really exciting solid limestone pots. I think this one weighed 700 pounds, so it was a little difficult to get in place, but I think it looks really nice with the dwarf olives that we have here. And we've noticed that with the pots being so thick, unlike normal terracotta pots or something like that, the soil actually doesn't dry out that quickly. It's almost as if we've planted these trees in the ground, since the solid stone really does seem to insulate it from the sun and keep the root ball cool, which is nice. We've lined this whole side of the concrete curb with a lavender row, which is exciting. It should grow in and form just a continuous line. We have a small little orchard here, just with an apricot, a 4-in-1 apple, a Dixon peach nectarine, and then a Honeycrisp apple. And then over through here up against the house, we've been doing a lot. We are in the process of building an outdoor shower over here. We just moved this ginormous palm. It was just a volunteer started growing on its own from our other European fan palms that we have on the property. And it got so big that we decided it would actually look pretty good over here, and we don't even have to buy a big one anymore. It was almost easier than I thought to dig it up. It still did take a few hours, but got it up, I think, mostly intact, so it should survive transplanting. And I think that'll be a really nice touch here. It'll obscure the view from the shower a little bit and give it a nice lush feeling while still fitting the Mediterranean vibe that we have going up here. We have a few olives, Italian cypress, and rock rose. This area is still kind of a work in progress, but I can bring you down over here and show you our California native section that is coming together a little bit better. We have a dark star ceanothus up here with a few little blooms on it already. Not the right time of year, but we just got it from the nursery, so it's probably not fully on the seasonal cycle yet. And we built up this whole area to make a berm. Our goal was to improve the drainage, since we have a lot of species that are very sensitive to extra summer water. We have different sages, like this is a white sage, Cleveland sage. We have a black sage too back here. And then this one is one of my favorites, a white leaf manzanita. We have them native around us, and they grow really tall. They can get to, I think, 15 feet or taller, and really pretty leaves, but they're very sensitive to summer water. So being up on this berm will make sure that any water it gets will drain away from it, and it should be nice and dry up here. We have a few other grasses that we added to the mix too. This purple needle grass should help stabilize the berm. Its roots get 10 feet deep, which is impressive for a little bunch grass like that. So I think that will definitely help stabilize this whole area, as well as the ceanothus will help too. This is a Yankee Point ceanothus. We have a few of them kind of sprinkled around the berm. Supposedly they grow well in part shade in inland parts of California, like where we are in Zone 9B in the foothills. So I think that will work really well here. We have another one over there that will help fill in. And then we're hoping to have a small little path that connects up to the chairs up there and then comes down. These grasses look a little weird right now where they are, but we're hoping that's kind of where the path's going to be. And then this ceanothus will spread in and help form the edge of the more narrow path that we're going for. Over on this side, off to my left, and now off to my right, is an understory planting that we're doing. All evergreen plants for the most part, except for a few things like this, a western redbud. and we're trying to block one pathway from the other. So all of these should grow up to form a loose hedge. We have regular toyon that we have native here. There's a cultivar up there called Davis Gold that has gold berries instead of the red ones. We have, I think, 3 or 4 different types of coffee berries. We have an Eve Case coffee berry here that we got from our local CNPS sale. We have Mount San Bruno coffee berries that we've gotten from a few different places. We have a serpentine coffee berry that we just got. That's a small one that I can show you. And then we also have the Hori coffee berry that's native, that's just been coming up. So we've transplanted a few of those and found one that's even in the perfect spot. This is a holly leaf red berry. Grows very slow, but will be exciting. Has red berries as well and should just help blend into the hedge, so it's a nice mix of different species. We put in more white leaf manzanita here. It's a little risky in the shade. I'm hoping it pulls through and survives, but we have seen some native growing wild here in the shade, and it just makes them a little leggier and they reach for light. So I'm hoping we'll have some of those light blue leaves peeking through the toyons as a nice contrast. Coming down here further, we have more of those different coffee berries. We sprinkled in a few deer grass. All this side by the redwoods is still somewhat of a work in progress, but it's a lot more water-loving plants. So we have Cornus ceraceae, which is red stem dogwood. A few of those all sprinkled throughout that will form a thicket and spread underground. And then we also have Douglas spirea that will work similarly and have really pretty pink flowers in spring. We have yerba mansa, some island alum root. This is a western azalea. Everything's been covered up lately since we had some fence work done, and in the meantime, the deer were eating everything. But thankfully the fence is done now. You can see it poking through above the bushes. It's 8 feet tall, so that should keep the deer out. And now the plants will be safe, which is good. But we still have some work to do on that area before it's finally complete. Moving down here, we have an Oregon grape, which is fun. A few of the Chinese pistache leaves falling on it. Fall is definitely here. We have 2 of these in the front yard that actually came up all on their own, so I think it will grow well here. We bought this at California Flora Nursery in Santa Rosa. So I'm really excited to add it into our native evergreen mix. Over here we have a madrone next to its other madrone friend over here. This one's from Local Seed, and then this one I believe is from the Bay Area. And then we have a third one all on its own on the other side of our future path that will come down here. We built this up to be a slight berm, which I think will be nice to kind of separate these areas and make the path feel more organic. And the path will come down here and then join back up with this path. We're still figuring out the design of this area, what sort of maybe tree we'll put there, hopefully something that flowers, has a little bit of interest. And then we have a Ray Hartman tucked just underneath this dogwood. The dogwood is an eastern dogwood, so it's native to the southeastern US, not the west coast where we are. So we might end up replacing it at some point. It has performed decently well. It's 30 years old, but it's starting to get some water sprouts and then some growth that has seemed to decline and get a little less vigorous. And I have heard that they have a shorter lifespan when they're planted outside of their natural climate range. So we might replace it with a Pacific dogwood, which grows a little bit more wild and upright, but same fall color and pretty flowers. So I think that could be a good replacement, but still have to weigh the options. I guess before we pass it, it's not much to see. It's still small, but we have a purple nightshade that we put in here. We got it from Las Politas Nursery down in Santa Margarita. It tolerates shade inland and is drought tolerant, so it should grow here well with no irrigation at all. Further back behind it, right about here maybe, I think we're going to be putting in a James Roof silk tassel. We have a few other silk tassels, the Garya Fremontii, which is our native bear brush, but they're seed grown, so we don't know the sex of them and if they'll have the large tassels or not. And right where that path comes in, we really want a good focal point here. So I think we'll use the James Roof, and with the extra irrigation we have, hopefully it will tolerate our inland climate. And then we'll use the other two seed-grown ones over on the other side of the property where we're adding another plant wall to block our neighbors. A lot of this area out here has kind of just gone wild. We have a lot of leaf litter and sparse plants. It's on the list to redo at some point. This, I think we're going to make an Australian section and do lots of different plants from the Mediterranean regions of Australia and maybe a few others if they excite us enough to make the list. Out here, I'm one day wanting to do maybe some sort of native grasses around these oak trees just to highlight their trunks and how unique they look. But nature does seem to have a slightly different plan because we have a toyon that's already growing in the protection of this oak tree. Already seems to be a few years old. So maybe we'll have to add a few shrubs too, and not just grasses. This Chinese pistache over here is looking really good also. Really dark red color. I feel like darker than our other Chinese pistaches. Almost a burgundy red. Right over here in the little protected area of this oak tree and stump, we have another toyon that's growing, which is exciting. Once you start looking for them, you notice they're coming up everywhere. Our berries are all going to get moved later this winter. Our blackberries, raspberries, and blueberries were not really sad or happy where they were, so we're going to be putting them into these troughs and lining this fence and ripping out all of those flowers. And then on the other side of the barn here, we'll be redoing all those planters and putting in cut flowers, which will be really fun. Except for, in the meantime, I do have a few miscellaneous plants that needed to be moved from other areas. So we've put in a couple Russian sage over here, some grasses, and then we've always had dahlias and hollyhocks and things like that. And then I needed somewhere for our California native cow parsnip. By the looks of it, I think a squirrel has been in here, or a skunk or something. The soil's a little bit disturbed, but the cow parsnip is still fine. It's in the carrot family, and it sends up huge flower stalks, so I'm really excited for that come spring. I wanted to get it out of its pot though, since being in the carrot family, it has a really big taproot, so keeping it in a little 4-inch pot for long would not be a recipe for success. So it's probably a little much to give it this whole trough, but it's empty and it was available, so it'll definitely be happy there. The rest of this area is all kind of just waiting to be demoed, so we've let a lot of it go. This is all honeywort that is growing like crazy. There's a ton of it over by you on the ground. There's borage coming up left and right, nasturtium. It's just mayhem out here. This is tomatillo. We didn't even plant tomatillo on this side. We planted it way over there and ripped it out, but obviously we left some tomatillos behind because we're growing more. Coming through the barn, we can walk up to the top of the pasture and see the few things that we've been working on up there. Currently we have some temporary fence panels up to keep our pony in tighter area. She has a calorie intake problem, and we have too many acorns and too much grass now that it's started raining. So we have to restrict how much access to the pasture she has. The tree line up at the very top of the property here is something that we're going to be working on adding to. We envision it becoming a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees. We have some Chinese elm that are up there. We might have a cottonwood. I need to work on IDing that. Some maples and different things like that. We can go through, take a closer look. Got lots of Canada geese as well. We picked up an egg when I was probably 12 or so and hatched it. And he ended up being returned back to the wild, but I think he comes back every year with an increasingly large family. But they're welcome visitors. They don't cause too much of a problem. So right now we're kind of just adding miscellaneous trees that we have to this area since it gets good irrigation, and it just helps build up a nice wall to block the view of the house behind it. But I think we're going to try and come up with a better plan over time and stick to some maybe pine or cypress species and then mix in different deciduous species so we have a little bit of fall color up here too. We planted a Mexican blue elderberry a little while ago. It seems to be doing all right. Some of its leaves are browning, but we are heading into winter, so hopefully its roots are happy and getting established, and it'll be back next year stronger than before. Continuing down here, we have a pretty mature Chinese elm, which is nice. It needs a little bit of pruning and maintenance, but the bark is really pretty on it. All speckled and patches of almost a manzanita color to it. And then we had some spare pittosporums, so we put those out here. They should enjoy the shade and irrigation up here, and just accent the Chinese elm. Some sort of maple. I'm not up to date on all of my maple IDing, so I'll have to consult Google for that one. I believe this is a redwood, and we have another one down there. So I guess they're the first of the evergreen species that we have in this tree line, but we'll be adding more. And then some that haven't been growing amazingly, we might just remove outright. But this area up in the pasture gets a lot of sun, so one day I think we'll be adding a lot up here, probably our productive garden and maybe a small orchard over in that pasture. Up here we might do a chaparral planting or even a desert planting if we improve the drainage. There's a lot of possibility, which is fun. One day I would love a formal rose garden. We could even do an aquatic garden. There's lots of possibilities, so it's exciting as long as the gophers don't stop all of our progress. We do have a gopher problem. Oh, I guess we do have one plant over here. It's probably not much to see. But we put in a gumweed here. It had some yellow flowers before our horse took a nibble of it, but thankfully he seems to have not liked the taste and learned, so it should grow back fine. And it's adapted to being in full sun and just on our natural rain cycle, so hopefully up against the fence it won't get mowed and it'll survive just fine right there. We have a mulberry in the center of the pasture here that we planted for shade a while ago. I'm not sure it's our favorite tree, so we might be replacing it one day. But I do like the concept of a tree out here, just maybe not that one. As we come further down this hill, we have something really exciting. It's a little hard to see now that the rest of the pasture is greening up from the rain, but we have a natural seep. The spring just comes right out of the hillside, and we have a whole strip. It extends into our neighbor's yard too, but goes practically almost all the way to the barn. And it stays moist and green year-round, even in summer when it's 100 degrees out. And we have already some native rush species growing here. This kind of tubed grass, almost leathery. So that's a good sign that we have lots of moisture right here. So we've been adding a few more species that can take advantage of that, but we got even more, and it'll be a work in progress. We're gonna plant some wild California annual sunflowers. They might have to go just above the seep a little bit. We'll see, maybe they'll survive the moisture. We have over here at our very professional looking plant marker. It was in part to just keep the horse from stepping on it. He did bite it and pull it out of the ground, and it's not looking like much right now because it's dying back for winter, but hopefully the roots are happy and this will come back and be a hibiscus lasiocarpus, or California hibiscus. It loves moist conditions, so it should grow well here and reach up above all of those grasses. And then we'll be able to take down this plant marker, which is nice. We have a glove here and I think a dog poop bag that can kind of flap in the wind. The goal was to scare the horse away from it a little bit, but that didn't work. He ate it anyway. We're also going to be adding in some bog lupin here, which is fun. We just got 3 of those, and they love moist conditions, and they'll also pop up above the grass with their flower stalks. That'll be really exciting. We're going to try and find some Seep monkey flower and a few other species to add in. So I think this will be a really exciting area. Hopefully we can still mow it and just time it with the time of year. So we'll wait until after all the seeds set and drop, and then we can still mow it back down, and then everything will come back up in the spring. And that will be our same plan with this area down here. Looks like that might have been a horse. Definitely didn't like the taste of it because it's milkweed. But something was here nibbling on it. Could have also been deer. But this is a showy milkweed that we recently planted. We have a mix of 3 different species here. And it looks like maybe all 3 have been eaten. This is a narrow leaf milkweed. While we don't have a seep over here, we did try and plant them according to the water that they're gonna get. There's a creek that's seasonal right at the bottom of this area here, and then the elevation steps up slightly as you go behind the frame of the camera. So we put the showy milkweed closest to where that seasonal water is, since they're most tolerant of it. And then the narrow leaf milkweed are the next band up with the purple needlegrass that we sprinkled in. And then way up at the top here, furthest away from the water in the driest area. And maybe this one's just losing leaves instead of them being eaten. But there is some soil disturbance too, so maybe we have squirrels checking things out. This is a woolly pod, or Indian milkweed. And this one likes much drier conditions. It gets full sun exposure here, south facing, and it's much higher up from the water, so it should perform well here. And this will just be our pollinator patch of native flowers, and the monarchs will love it, hopefully. We had some come last year on our milkweed up by our California native section, but since we took all that out and redid it in more chaparral plants, we wanted to make sure we still had some milkweed on the property for them. We can come through here to the train wreck of what's left of our productive garden. We've been so focused on landscaping And we already had so much food from the summer that we got from the garden that we kind of just stopped paying attention to it. Still harvested a few things, but now we have, I think, tomatoes starting to rot on the vine even. So this is definitely not our best work. It'll be prettier next year in spring and summer, but all things must come to an end at some point. So we'll be tearing out a lot of this. We're already kind of tarping some of the weeds to keep them down. We'll be putting down some cardboard and compost on top to add more nutrients. But we still have a lot of Fresno chilies, some jalapenos, some serranos. Our tomatoes did really well this year. Our nasturtium is taking off. This right here is one plant of nasturtium, which is kind of crazy. It's easily 3 feet tall and 8 feet wide. Got a few last strawberries in here, but they've been a little slower to ripen, and with all the moisture, the pest pressure is definitely higher this time of year, so we haven't been getting that many strawberries lately. But during the summer, we were getting lots. And over here, this is kind of funny how aggressive these California poppies have been. We planted just a few, this kind of cluster here, and then back to those larger ones that you see. And they went to seed, and the seeds definitely germinated. We have thousands of California poppy seedlings growing here, which is exciting. I don't know if we want them right in the garden, but at least we have them. We bought, I think, 2 pounds more of bulk California poppy seeds. We're going to be sprinkling that all out in the pasture, and hopefully it'll just start growing wild out there too, which is probably a better spot for it than right in what was our garlic patch. We also have a passion fruit over here. It was our first time trying it. It had a little bit of a rough start, but then it started growing. We're not too sure how it will survive our winter. Supposedly it's cold tolerant variety. I believe it's purple possum, and it can tolerate 20 to 30 Fahrenheit, so we'll see. It will probably lose its leaves and we'll have to cut it back, but it should regrow. And if not, thankfully I did take a cutting and propagate it, so we have one growing in our greenhouse too as a backup, so it won't be for naught. If it doesn't make it out here, we'll just have a new one in the greenhouse. This is the other section of our productive garden that is also a little past its prime. Lots of tomatoes, overripe tomatoes, lots of jalapenos that are getting past their prime and getting ready to be chipotles. But our citrus wall back here is doing pretty good. One day we might move these to a different location, but all of these lemons are ripening up quickly, which is good to see. Coming up here into the rest of the yard, we can see some big piles of road base and decomposed granite for our projects up in the California native area. And then this whole area underneath the oak trees will get redone eventually. Our first step of that was a canyon live oak that we just put in here this fall. It looks like it's doing all right. It's probably looking forward to the upcoming rain we're getting here soon. We could probably give it an extra bucket full too to help it out. But hopefully that will grow up nice and block this shop here as we're walking down from the house. Coming over here, we have a photinia hedge that's worked out pretty well for us. We need to do a little bit more pruning to keep it tighter and denser, but we have a gap down here that we've never really been able to fill in properly. So we decided to use it as an opportunity to put in a California native plant wall to block the view here. We're going to do a mixed hedge, so it'll have a few different species. We're going to try out Catalina cherry, which is more coast adapted, so we're not sure if it'll be able to withstand our winters, but hopefully with protection just the first year or so, it'll establish enough and be able to perform well here. And then we're going to add in some mountain mahoganies. This is where we'll put our seed-grown Garrya fremontii, which is our native inland adapted silk tassel, and that gets to about 12 feet high over time. It'll take a while to get mature, but I think those filled in here with maybe a few red buds, maybe a few toyons. I think we've bought over a dozen toyons at this point, so it's hard to wrap my mind around buying more toyons and coffee berries, but we might have to get some of those to add in here too. And I think those will all grow up nicely. We'll keep this pine or cedar, I'm not sure what it is. We planted it a while ago. It's definitely not a Mediterranean plant, but it's a nice touch there. And I think this area will fill in nicely. Eventually we might add other native dogwoods or accent trees underneath along this creek. We can come around this side and show you some of it. We have, this is Bear's Breeches. It's native to the Mediterranean region, and it's really nice here. It works almost like a bulb where you don't have to give it any water, just works on the rain. So right after we had a couple storms here in the fall, they've all popped back up through the leaves, and they'll grow up to 3 feet tall and then send up flower stalks even taller than that. And it's a really interesting look. They're kind of prickly flowers with purple and white accents on them, almost a prehistoric look to it. And I think it gives a really nice lush vibe along this creek here. And while they are invasive in more coastal habitats, like down in San Luis Obispo and also along the coast of Oregon and California, they work really well here because without the creek and without a little bit of supplemental water, they probably would die out, but you don't have to do much to help them thrive, which is nice. We have some that are on the edge of the grass, and those ones stay green year round, but these ones here die in the summer and then come back in the fall. One day, maybe this winter, we're going to be ripping out all of this English ivy that's starting to strangle that oak tree a little bit and climbing over our boulders and up our dogwood. So I think we're going to be ripping that out and maybe putting in something else that climbs. We do kind of like that aspect, but we don't want it to smother the tree. So I've been looking into Dutchman's pipe vine, which is a native vine in California, and it also helps the swallowtail butterflies. So I'm hoping that might work there. It does need a little bit of irrigation, but with the lawn edge and overspray, I think it might work out. This whole planter is going to be redone. Sadly, the oak tree in the center of it, it was one of our favorite oak trees. We don't know what happened. It may have been too much irrigation from the lawn being just 10 or 15 feet away from it for 25 years, but I think we're gonna have that tree removed this fall, sadly, but that does give us a lot of opportunity to redo that whole area. We have a Japanese maple and some camellias, so we might do an Asian-inspired planter section. We have some giant bamboo on the property that haven't been growing because of the location they were put in, so they'd be a lot happier over here with the full sun. We're not sure if that's the look we want to go for yet, but I think that could work out nicely. Where that grass is, Carl Forrester, that was where our giant palm was that we just dug up and moved to the back of the house. And coming up here further, it's not in its prime right now. It's definitely coming into fall, but some things are still blooming. We call it our rock garden. I've added a few California native species here just as kind of a temporary nursery. One is Western Columbine that's starting to die back a little bit. And then we also have our Hooker's Evening Primrose, which this has grown really well. We also have a frog. The Hooker's Evening Primrose should expand and grow really quickly. It could honestly fill in this whole circle if we don't get a handle on it later, but I think in the meantime that'll be a good way to do it, and we can just multiply our collection since we only have one. And then we have lots of nasturtium coming up, some cosmos that have all gone to seed and the seeds have germinated and they're coming back. We have some bee balm, some sad hollyhocks that the deer ate. Coming up from the rock garden, we have our brand new greenhouse. It was just completed a little earlier this year. We still have some work to do. We're gonna add a concrete curb here, add a little bit more gravel, probably some planter boxes. And then I think we're gonna keep a bench here. We kind of like the seating, but this one's a little rickety, so I think we're gonna replace that. And you can come on in. It's still definitely a work in progress. We've only moved some plants in here. We've been trying to experiment with the humidity and temperature and lighting and all of that to see what we can grow in this greenhouse and what grows best. We added some shade cloth up to the skylights that provide a little bit more dappled and diffuse light for some of these tropical plants like this angel wing begonia. And then some things we're just keeping temporarily in here. Like we have a foxtail agave that we'll be planting in the yard later, but it's just hanging out in here over winter to make sure it doesn't get too waterlogged. Similarly with these century plant, agave americana, we have 3 of them in there, and I think all 3 already have pups too, so we'll have even more soon. And then we're just keeping some soil and fertilizer and pots and things like that in here. Down at this end, we have a few other plants that we've dug up from the yard, little volunteers that we're raising back to health and getting to be a little bit larger before they go back out in the yard, as well as a California native species actually that I don't think is tolerant of our conditions here. It's used to being on the coast. It's sand dune sage. It's an Artemisia. So it doesn't like our cold winters or our hot summers. So hopefully it'll grow in here all right, because it is really pretty, even just in a pot. And then we have our surprise avocado and then a Stewart avocado. Both of these used to be out in the yard, but they couldn't really survive our hot summers and cold winters, so it was a constant battle. And then they had too much light and then not enough light, and it was just not working. So we decided to cut our losses and dig them up and put them in pots in here, and hopefully with the more controlled climate they'll grow properly. We also have some gardenias that we put in here. We also dug these up from the yard. They either weren't getting enough irrigation, or in the case of this one, was getting eaten by the deer a lot. So it just never even really had a chance to leaf out. So hopefully in here it will be doing a little bit better. Definitely keeps things warmer in here. It was 50 degrees last night, and it's already 77 or 76 inside the greenhouse. And humidity is over 60%, which is what we want. This is also a Mediterranean-inspired area that we're doing, so we just added in this Italian cypress. Over on this other section behind the path and lawn, we're doing mostly South African species, so we're putting society garlic, podocarpus, breath of heaven. We have some agapanthus back here too. Looks like we have a nasturtium coming up that's not supposed to be here. We put gladiolus bulbs all in here as well that we moved from another planter. This is a leucadendron winter red, and another one here. Already starting to get that red color with the cooler temps we've been having. And then just like the Euryops that we have in the front yard, I think I might put a big Euryops right here. We might have to move these agapanthus that we just put in, but since we just put them in, they should still move easily. And then one day we're still figuring out how it would look and how to do it, but we're thinking of putting a fountain here. Originally, we were thinking of doing a wall fountain. We're still trying to figure out the layout, but some sort of fountain over here and lots of South African plants. And then We have an Italian cypress here, and we also added in some bush germanders. Teocrium fructans, I think it's called. Azurum is the cultivar. I really like the look of those. They have a silvery gray foliage and they hedge really well, which we just got this one in the ground, but our plan is to keep it in a tighter hedge to form a nice little ball. And this is a Mediterranean native species. We have a Spanish lavender here as well. I'm not sure if it will survive, hopefully. We had it over by the AC unit beforehand, but dug it up and transplanted it, and its roots were getting a little woody, so I'm not sure if it will survive that trauma of transplanting, but we can always get another one to add there. We have another Tuscan blue rosemary. This is a coast rosemary, so not actually a Mediterranean species, but fits the look for sure. It's actually from temperate coastal regions in Australia. So I think that will look really nice. We're planning to have that one stay small, hopefully. We can cut it and then it'll grow back and kind of always look like this, hopefully. Further back here, we're thinking of adding in a bay laurel that we hedge to kind of keep the right size. And then eventually we're gonna redo this planter too. We have a nice mature European fan palm. Some of these society garlic. This is variegated society garlic, and then just regular society garlic. Those are both South African species, so we're gonna dig those up and throw them over in our South African area. And then these are often called geraniums, but they're actually, I think, palindromiums. They're South African as well, so I think we're gonna take those and move them over too. And then we're figuring out what would be best here. We think something low to accentuate the fan palm. We already added in one of these fescues. It's a Mediterranean variety. So we're thinking maybe lots of those mass planted underneath this fan palm with some other statement piece down at the end. We're considering different lilies. There's leopard lilies that are native to California that could be cool there. We're still figuring out what'll work. Back here, we have a giant American agave, variegated, and I think, sadly, we're probably gonna be taking it out. It gets too much overspray from the lawn right here and shade from this tree, so its leaves, or I guess their leaves, are flopping over a lot. And normally when it's happy, they stay nice and upright and rigid. The first couple leaves are still upright, but after that, they start drooping pretty quickly. So I think we're gonna remove that. Maybe put some bear's breeches over here with some Mediterranean spurge. And I think that'll complete the look over here and transition nicely into the camellia and the bay laurel. And then one day, maybe this fall if we get around to it, or winter, we'll be replacing this tree. I'm pretty sure it's a maple, but it's gotten a little too big for the space. We didn't think that through when we planted it maybe 7 or 10 years ago. So now it's getting up to touching the roof of the house, and more leaves in the gutters, and rats are starting to climb it, so it's not a good recipe. So I think we're gonna be removing that, hopefully grinding the stump down and replacing it with another tree that's a little bit more manageable here. We still like the shade, so maybe a strawberry tree, if we can find one that can tolerate the extra irrigation of the lawn. Potentially Arbutus unido could work, or we'll find some other species that'll work well here. Italian cypress could work if we improve the drainage enough, but we might already have enough of those. There's a few different options, so one day we'll be replacing that. Here we have our tree roses. This lantana is getting its last few blooms before it gets cut back in fall. It's interesting, these are the same varieties, this lantana and this one over here, but this one grows much more horizontally in spreads and drapes over the edges, and that one seems to form more of a bush. So I'm not sure why that's the case, but we're fine with it for now. Up here against the house, we have, first of all, a good example of a nice mature sago palm, as well as more of them over there. This is a male, and then we have a male down there, and then this one is a female, so that one actually has some seeds on it. Up in this planter, we've been adding a few California native species. We have yellow-eyed grass, and then behind it we have purple-eyed grass. So they're both in the iris family and have really pretty little flowers, and they like extra moisture, so in this irrigated planter it should do really well. And then we have some daylilies back there, a salvia, some canna lilies, asparagus, ferns. It's a little eclectic, but it does look nice and lush most of the year right outside of our nook, which is nice. You can ignore the hot tub and pool for right now. It's currently being repaired. But this is another view of our Mediterranean area. Right on this corner is where we envision the foxtail agave going. So it'll be a really nice accent and a high visibility place here. We're going to be removing this pomegranate back here. We're waiting for the leaves to drop off, so it's hopefully a better time to dig it up and try and transplant it. And with how vigorous the pomegranates grow here, we aren't too concerned if it accidentally doesn't transplant right, just because we planted this one as a tiny little stick from a 1-gallon pot. And I think it's only 3 years old, and we've even pruned it a lot, so it could easily be 15 feet tall if we weren't pruning it. So we could always get a new one. And then I think we're gonna put this, I believe it's a Tuscan blue. Yes, Tuscan blue rosemary right here as kind of a structural hedge. And then that will complement the Italian cypress here. And then the rock rose behind it will be a little bit looser in mounding. And then we have these, I believe they're fescues from the Mediterranean that we need to plant somewhere around in here as little accents. And then in the back, I think we're going to be putting in maybe some Mediterranean spurge or lavender, something to kind of fill in this space a little bit. And then we'll put in decomposed granite as mulch, and I think this area will be pretty much complete. I can take you over to behind the pool, and that might wrap up our tour. It definitely isn't looking as good as it was back in the summer. We'll have to include some footage of that. But we have canna lilies here, some black mondo grass. Here's more of the agapanthus, lily of the Nile, some hostas, lots of different canna lilies. We have some yellow ones, orange ones. These ones kind of get a yellow and an orange hue to them, which is fun. We have some nasturtium that's growing in here, which I think actually looks pretty good. I think it's a good blend between the Mediterranean look and a more tropical lush look. So I think it's a good bridge plant for our property that works out in this lush pool planting, but then also works in drier areas around the yard and gardens. The hostas are definitely past their prime. We've been starting to get some cooler weather. And then this is our red Abyssinian banana, and it is impressively tall now. I really like it. Some of its leaves are starting to flop. We just cut them throughout the year. And even last year, we didn't even have to protect it. It has so many leaves now that we left a few on through winter, and that was enough insulation for it. We've transplanted a few agapanthus over here as well, more black mondo grass, and then we have a few clusters of gladiolus that are just starting to send up some shoots, which is a good sign. And then we have our slim bottle brush that we just recently got and added here. We wanted something that would block the view as you're coming down the path from the sauna, from seeing the shop further out in the yard. And I think this will grow here really nicely. It stays somewhat slim, thus its name, and contained, but also looks really lush and has the fun red bottle brush flowers. So I think it'll work really well here. It's from the more temperate regions in Australia of, I believe, New South Wales and Queensland. So it's not Mediterranean adapted, but with a little bit of extra water, it can definitely handle the heat here. So I think it'll grow really nicely. We have some Mediterranean spurge around the back here too, which I think we're going to be getting more of. They look really nice like this when they have the silvery foliage, but they also get really big flower clusters that are neon green, which is kind of fun too. You have to find the right spot for it because neon green isn't the best to have in every planter, but we like it, so it looks good here at least. Like many of our other areas, it's been a work in progress. We have some hostas underneath this weeping cherry, and then we've been trying to get star jasmine to establish and cover this wall, but it hasn't been working for us all that well. This one on the edge is doing all right, but as you get further into the sun, these ones just get scorched, and I think with this retaining wall heating up in the sun, it just bakes that soil, so it doesn't really retain much moisture. But we've added a few asparagus ferns and agapanthus too that should be fun to have blooming right here because they'll almost be at eye level when you're walking on the lawn. We have a tuberous sword fern up there too that we'll probably be removing and just using other ferns around the property instead. So while this probably isn't the best planter to end it on, because it's definitely not looking that good, it is representative of a lot of our yard, that it's always a work in progress. We're always moving plants around, slowly making it look better over time, adding plants here and there, and eventually getting towards our vision. So I'm glad you guys were able to come on the tour with us today. Fall isn't always the most exciting season for landscaping tours, but a lot of the leaves were changing color, which is nice. The Chinese pistache was beautiful to see. The dogwoods are looking good. And hopefully you guys can come back in spring for a tour when everything else is in bloom.